Hey everybody, Jonathan Broadbent here, your host of UnWoke.Academy and the Financial PMA. Well, I noticed on my way into this week's Wednesday live stream at noon, that is noon every Wednesday at Eastern Time, for your lunch break midweek, I like to go live and open up opportunity for you to ask questions, pose comments, and otherwise engage with our ongoing discussion of woke Wall Street. And I noticed on the way in that we have a little change to the audio. I'm not exactly sure where that audio came from, but that briefly went out. I'll have to figure out how to remove that from the list. But so without further ado, it is Wednesday Eastern Time, noon. And for sake of conversation, for those of you who don't already know this, in addition to Unwoke Academy, I'm also co host of two different programs. In addition to and separate from Unwoke Academy and the Financial PMA. One is something called Ohio Political News. I'm one of the co-hosts of Ohio Political News. Depending on which software you use, which browser you use, or search engine, you may find Ohio Political News listed first, second, or perhaps third in the conservative realm for Ohio podcasts. So we've been working on that for quite some time, about 4 years in. Hard to believe, but it's been about 4 years. And separate from that, but also very complimentary, I also am co-host of a drive time morning radio show. That's called Voice of Geauga, and that's a radio show and podcast. So if you're interested in the things that I'm talking about, you may find some complimentary content in either Ohio Political News or Voice of Geauga. If you find those on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, and we're growing onto Substack. I believe that Ohio Political News is already on Substack. You may find some additional content there that you like. For instance, there's yours truly. Just this last week, I was on Ohio Political News, and one of our guests was Lake County Commissioner John Plechnik. John Plechnik made some very compelling, very interesting comments. So, by way of some conversation, I'm going to replay for you a bit of that. So, kind of crossing two streams a little bit here. This is Ohio Political News. This is recorded content. Everything that we put out on Ohio Political News can be found Rumble, Facebook, and elsewhere. By the way, this John Plechnik has no affiliation with, has not supported or endorsed either. He has not supported or endorsed Unwoke Academy or the Financial PMA, but he did make some public comments here that I think are germane. So I'm going to go ahead and share this. And actually, hold on one second. I'm going to switch the way that I'm sharing this. Let me go back to share. I want to make sure that I'm sharing this. Yep, good. There was a slight delay there. Good. So I'm going to go ahead and share this video. I think that you'll like and see where I'm headed with this sharing of comments from Commissioner Plechnik. That is actually a website. You can find me at UnWoke.Academy and on X, YouTube, Rumble, really most all of the social media platforms. There's been a lot of heavy engagement on that. And oddly enough, we are finding some people that are going out and dutifully sticking that yard sign in their sign or all over social media saying no data centers. And there are people that are concerned about what's happening in Perry Township in Lake County with that sort of a debacle. They're fighting back against the data centers, but then some of them are unknowingly falling into the trap. The propaganda, there's that word again, propaganda, that is pitching flock cameras and their use and pitching these smart meters on the side of your house. There's more to it. There's a lot more objective in rolling out these massive AI data centers, but those are two that's low-hanging fruit for conversation, talking about those and how they tie together with AI data centers. Again, it's UnWoke.Academy. If you find me on Facebook, so I'm doing the same thing, and thankfully Kent, who you just heard from behind the scenes running Ohio political news, is also serving as my unofficial strategist for helping to get the word out. And we're growing a new Facebook page. So there's a Facebook page as well. Find me on Facebook. Find UnWoke.Academy. Don't forget to follow. Same thing with Ohio political news. It's how we get the word out. I am fighting hard behind the scenes to track down and uncover the names behind the data centers and the flock cameras and the smart meters. You're going to find all that at UnWoke.Academy. Now over to Brian.
Yeah, tomorrow, Leonard Gilbert and I will be traveling to Darke County. We will be speaking to the patriots in Darke County about the property tax issue.
So let me start by agreeing with Jonathan that all these technologies are interconnected in an ill-defined web that most people don't understand. And I want to start with a very folksy introduction here. I want to start with the Lord of the Rings. And we might recall that the evil villain of the Lord of the Rings, the titular Lord of the Rings, Sauron, the one who makes the One Ring to rule them all, is depicted as a giant red glowing eye who watches everything that everyone's doing from his evil tower of Barad-dûr and Mordor by the volcano. And he does this with a magic seeing stone, which is called the Palantir. And interestingly enough, a fan of the Lord of the Rings by the name of Peter Thiel created a large public company called Palantir, which works on creating surveillance technologies for governments, including the United States. They have many billions of dollars in government contracts from the US, and their main goal is collecting, interpreting, processing data to monitor the populace. And flock cameras are cameras that automatically read license plates and allow police departments or any other government agency to monitor where a given license plate, in other words, where a given car and its driver may be. And by cross-referencing that data, just like cross-referencing a ping from your cell phone, what cell tower is your cell phone using? That gives a rough idea of where the person is. You add in GPS tracking, you add in flock cameras, and suddenly you start to paint a picture where you know exactly where Jonathan Broadbent is at all given times. You either have his license plate on a flock camera, you have his cell phone pinging on a tower, you have him on a bank camera as he makes a withdrawal. Wherever he goes, there's a touch point, and we start to literally see a dot on a map, and we can trace where Jonathan has been all day, every day of his life. And we go from having a relatively free, unwatched existence to one where the Dark Lord Sauron can see us at all times, how we spend our money, where we go, what we do. But flock cameras were harder to abuse in the past because you have to overlay that data with the cell phone, with the GPS, with the broader map, and then you have to interpret it for millions, for billions of people. And we didn't have the capacity to do that because, number one, we didn't have enough data storage. And number two, we couldn't sift through as human beings that much data. There just wasn't enough time in the day, no matter how nosy a government might be. Enter data centers where we can store unbelievable terabytes of data. Enter artificial intelligence, which isn't very useful for most things, but it's great at plagiarizing high school papers and for sorting through mountains of otherwise worthless data to spy on one individual person. And so you put together the flock camera along with cell phone and GPS, the Internet of Things, all these different devices that are collecting data about us that individually used to be relatively harmless. A police officer would get a highlight or a red flag if a murderer drove through their jurisdiction, and then they could look to pull him over and arrest them. Flock cameras started out as a relatively innocent idea, at least as far as the general public was concerned. But when you overlay it with these massive hyperscale data centers that can save all that data going back forever, and artificial intelligence that can immediately cross-reference Jonathan Broadbent or any other person you choose, Now we have a really dangerous government surveillance state that grew out of all these seemingly unrelated technologies, but now effectively allows Uncle Sam to know virtually anything and everything we do. And ironically, we're giving up our green spaces, we're giving up our electricity, we're giving up our water just so that we can be spied on. And to help the government do that, we're slapping smart meters on all of our homes and businesses so that if the data center needs the power, they can turn your air conditioner off during the summer. To add insult to injury, they not only know whether your air conditioner is running, the smart meter lets them turn it off.
I'm going to add one piece to that because this is a focal point for what we're doing at UnWoke.Academy right now. We've got some people that are working nationally on trying to unpack this and make it bite-sized and understandable to the American populace. Some of us have attached a figure, an estimate. This is just a loose ballpark estimate of $20 trillion. It would cost perhaps $20 trillion to build out infrastructure across the United States sufficient that our government and government-related agencies could track us in the way that John Plechnik just described. That would be very much like communist China currently does. And by the way, those flock cameras do a lot more than read your license plate. Don't be fooled. And also, just so that you know, those are generally speaking never owned by the municipality. Companies like Flock Safety lease them to the municipality, and the hook, the fishing hook that's set for the community is we're going to increase safety and you'll get some added revenue from traffic violations. But the camera itself does far more than reading license plates, and the data is collected and owned by the company. Some of the data is then shared back to the municipality. So that is a massive, huge safety breach right there. But focusing for a moment on the roughly $20 trillion estimate, if that's the price tag, and I actually think that's probably very low, if that's the price tag to build all these AI data centers, we already know that the AI that these companies, NVIDIA, Alphabet, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Apple, etc., are very powerful, and they have lobbyists in government that are getting tax abatements to be able to build these data centers. But that doesn't cover the cost. If you think for a moment that these companies are going to spend their own money to build the, let's just say, $20 trillion build out to build a surveillance state, I am sorry to tell you, I think that you're wrong. It will not be out of their pocket. Wall Street is already redirected. And according to latest estimates by Ed Dowd, who is somebody I follow, you should probably also follow. He's a contemporary of mine with a similar background on Wall Street. Ed Dowd is now estimating that around 45% of investment dollars in things like mutual funds, that means your IRA, 401k, etc., is invested in either AI data centers, these mega complexes, or is data center adjacent. I'm going to stop it right there and let me remove that from the scene. That is what we've been talking about quite a bit at UnWoke.Academy. And I think that that was good perspective. I like the fact that County Commissioner John Plechnik put it in a context that most people can easily get their heads around, which is the ominous nature of Sauron, Lord Sauron from the Lord of the Rings. So anyway, that concludes this Wednesday's weekly Wednesday live stream. Thanks for tuning in. As always, if there are any questions, feel free to email those to me at jonathan@unwokeinvesting.com. Look forward to seeing you next week, Wednesday noon Eastern Time.